Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this Winter Owl in the Mist painting process. So this was kind of cool how this started out. I just textured a canvas and I just used some modeling paste and a trowel in order to do that, and then gessoed the canvas. I honestly had a pretty cool idea, but I really didn't know where I was going to go with it. This week has been a little bit challenging as far as the motivation and inspiration in order to do any kind of painting, just because that tends to happen to me in the winter. However, I did manage to squeeze out a little bit of creativity this week in the form of this owl painting, and it turned out to be a pretty cool painting. So to get the misty effects, I first started off by getting color on the entire canvas and getting all of the white out, and then I let that dry and I used a dish sponge in order to start getting some foggy effects and also lighten up the color on the canvas but still have that underlying color that was the base. I did want this to have a winter color palette, which for me is usually a lot of Payne's gray, burnt umber, and in this case, very muted earthy tones. We have seen so many owls lately. This has definitely been an owl winter for us, and we have gone out quite a bit in nature, and Ron has gotten a lot of photographs. By the way, he is a photographer, my fiance, and he has gotten photographs of a lot of owls. He's like the owl whisperer. He can find them anywhere. It's crazy. He's gotten snowy owls and barred owls, screech owls, short-eared owls, just a ton of different kinds of owls, and it inspired me to create this painting this week, which was pretty cool. The Northeast in the winter is pretty bleak, but it seems to be the best time to capture owls, and partially because the snowy owls are only around here in the winter. And it's very Arctic tundra-ish, you could say, because they kind of stay around the beachy coastal areas, and it's really cool to see them in person. They're such huge owls. My next painting, I definitely would like to incorporate a snowy owl into, just because Ron got an amazing photo of one, and I want to use that as a reference photo. So stay tuned for that if you're interested in owls, because I'm probably going to be doing that in the next video. So anyway, moving on. Painting this owl was a bit of a challenge, definitely, because the reference photo that I used for this particular owl was extremely dark, and I had to lighten everything up. So I did have to take quite a bit of artistic license with this particular owl, because the whole entire right side of its face and body was pretty much in shadow, and I kind of changed it around quite a bit and made this a much brighter painting, even though it is moody and kind of bleak in its own way. But I think that contributes to the air of mystery sort of surrounding the painting in general. It definitely has a mystical vibe to it, which I really enjoy, and I think all the texture on the canvas definitely added to that, and it created a really cool background. There were a lot of phases that this owl ended up going through where I lightened it up quite a bit and then continued to layer paint on it, and I'm only in the acrylic portion of it, but as you can see, I kind of went in with a sponge again and started creating some of the shapes of the wing with the sponge. And like I said, the original reference photo is extremely dark, so I almost went in the complete opposite direction in order to create this misty effect. I did play around with a lot of different techniques with this painting. I added drips to it. I wanted to kind of make this washed out effect, and I thought that that was a cool addition to it. You never know how things are going to turn out until you're actually doing them. But I did like how all of the varied techniques were playing off of each other and creating these layers of texture with the paint and the texture that was already on the canvas. And just being able to play on a canvas is a really important part of things, I think. That's not to say that every idea that I ever have works out to some kind of phenomenal outcome. It doesn't always. Sometimes it's like, that was a bad idea. However, you don't know unless you try something out, and that's the only way that you're going to learn about different ways of doing things is by experimenting and being explorative. And take these branches, for instance. I was taking a huge risk by painting them over the owl and using black in order to do that, but you know what? I needed something that was in the foreground that would create a little bit more depth within the painting and something that was going in front of the owl. This could have been disastrous. I could have ended up with a big blob of black paint over something that I had already done. However, I did have an idea in my head and I thought that it would work out, and it turns out that it really did. So if I hadn't taken that risk, I would never have known. And I think it added something to the painting, and I think it enhanced it tremendously and gave it that natural feel of the owl being in a wooded area. The last step in this painting was to do a layer of oils and really get this background to recede and get more of the detail into the owl itself. So doing some cool glazes in the background and then putting a lot of focus into the left eye. And that was mainly because this is the only part of the painting that is highly saturated and has the richest color in it with this earthy red color. And this creates the focal point, so the viewer's eye will immediately be drawn to this part of the painting, and it's almost like the intensity of the owl's gaze is drawing you in. So my main focus for detail was on the left side of the owl's face, and that's where I concentrated oil painting for the most part. I really wanted to put all of the layers in with the feathers and creating the stacked appearance of feathers. So I started putting in some of the tawnier colors, but you'll see me continue to make adjustments to that side of the owl and give it a lot more definition as we go through the rest of this process. So I had very faintly put in the right eye of the owl, and you might wonder, why'd you do that if you're just going to cover it up? Well, you can still see the outline of the owl's eye underneath all of that mist. So all I was really doing was misting out that side of the owl to kind of match the side of the painting that has all of those drips and that washed out effect. My main focus at this point in the painting process was just to do all of the refinement on the left side of the face and give that stacked appearance to the feathers, bring some warmth into certain areas of the painting so that you could easily discern the owl from the background. And I really did want to have a little bit more warmth on the side of the owl, and so I did some glazes and rubbed them out and then continued to refine and stack brush strokes in order to create the feathered effect on the owl's face. But anyway, this painting is almost finished, and I love the way this owl came out. I've become a huge fan of owls in general after being able to see them, which is weird because I rarely ever saw them before until I started going out with Ron and he was photographing them, and I was like, I don't know how he finds them, because I've lived here my whole life. I've never seen one. I've probably seen one. It's crazy. But also, I do have the full-length video on my Patreon page if you are interested in that, and I share with you my whole palette with acrylics and oils, as well as an in-depth look at all of the techniques that I use to create this painting. So, and my reference photo. So if you're interested in that, head over there. In the meantime, I love you guys, and thank you for watching. Bye.